Hello, and welcome back to Analog Slop, where two music industry lifers revisit the enemy and melody maker of their youth, which in our case is the 90s. We're exploring artists we discovered as wide-eyed teenagers, only to disown as sneering 20-somethings. Now, unshackled from our hipster baggage, we dive deep into the pre-digital age to look back on a time when music news came but once a week. My name is Graham Best. I've worked in music publishing and music tech for over 20 years.
And my name is Adam Bushell. I've been a music supervisor for 20 years.
Each week, one of us will read the NME, one of us will read the Melody Maker, and we will pick out the most interesting stories and discuss them.
Join us this week for part 2 of our 2-part look at the enemy and Melody Maker from the 24th of May, 1997. This week, we revisit seminal big beat ephemera with Fatboy Slim's Beat Up the Enemy mixtape and rate the 1997-ness of this week's Melody Maker album reviews.
Welcome back to Analog Slop. You join us for part 2 of our deep dive into the enemy and Melody Maker of the 24th of May, 1997. Last week, we took two titans of serious young men music, in the 90s at least, in the shape of Spiritualized and Radiohead, and paired them up together.
Radiohead won, if you didn't.
The jury's still out. not the commercial jury. that was lost a long time ago. This week we are opening and we are going to let our hair down after all that po-faced business. So without any further ado, I would like to get into this week's free cover tape mixed by Fatboy Slim. It is titled Beat Up the Enemy.
Nice.
It has an accompanying article called Numbingly and the Big Beat Goes On, in which Norman Cook and the enemy go through a track-by-track rundown of the mixtape.
I would love to hear this, as I can't remember what is on this track. What is on this tape, although I listen to it a lot.
Boy, are you in for a wild ride, because I needed a fucking hack to get a second segment together quickly today.
Okay.
So we will be doing a track-by-track rundown of this mix.
Nice.
So this is ground zero for a significant number of mumbling indie nerd to wide-eyed rave bunny conversions. It's Fatboy Slim's first, and if you believe Discogs comments, widely considered best mix. It was, like I said, Beat Up the Enemy, a free tape with every copy of the Enemy sold in the UK this week in 97. And it was one devoured by yours truly until I'm not sure what happened. Either the tape wore out or I moved to London the following year, dropped Big Beat like a stone and attempted to rewrite my musical history. Who can say which? Bit of context before we dive into this track by track. At this point in 1997, Fatboy Slim is due to headline that week's Brighton Essential Music Festival, as covered in our very first episode, helpfully going head-to-head with Kraftwerk headlining Tribal Gathering on the exact same day.
I read the same thing in the Melody Maker this week. That is unfortunate for everybody involved in the Brighton Festival.
Yes. There's only one winner there, and it's not Radiohead this time. So Fatboy Slim had released the Going Out of My Head single the previous month, which was taken from his 1996 debut album, Better Living Through Chemistry. Going Out of My Head charted at a surprisingly high 57 in the UK. It's worth bearing in mind we are less than 4 months away from his first ever top 40 hit, which was Everyone Loves a Carnival, which is a really, I don't know.
It's shit.
It's a remix of Everyone Loves a 303, which I remember really fondly. And I was about to say it's great, and then I realised how long it was since I'd heard it, so I'm not gonna go there.
I don't like either version. There's a couple of tracks that I really still like and listen to this day. A few, I'm not ashamed to admit it, but those I never liked those two.
Not ashamed to admit it, he said in a voice dripping with shame. Anyway, we're 4 months away from his first top 40 hit, and we are a year away from the NMA single of the week, the Rockefeller Skank. And I only know that because in our unused notes archive, I have a huge rambling piece on that single of the week that we had to cut because we'd overrun so far on an earlier episode. Now, Adam, memory serves that you were enthusiastic rather than spiritually awoken by this mixtape. Would you care to set your feelings, if you remember them, on this tape to the record?
I remember liking it. I can't remember anything about it. I was about to Google the track list so I could read along with you, but I've decided not to, so each track could be a surprise. I was in on the career of Fatboy Slim.
I think we talked before about how into Better Living Free Chemistry you were.
Well, actually, I think it was I owned the Going Out of My Head CD single, and believe it or not, I saw the video on MTV before I think I'd seen it anywhere else, and I was just like, this is fantastic." Like, I was just like, "This is exactly what I want from music." Do you know what I mean? It's just this kind of stupid guitar loop, with just like big hip hop drum. It's big beat, I don't describe what big beat is. Yeah, I was really into that single. I still don't understand how it made economic sense to sample The Who that extensively and do you know what I mean? And then release that as a single, but I'm sure they figured that out. The skint 12 inches, a bit like Oasis CD singles, used to just be perennially in print and around, like all the kind of big ones that you would want to own were easy enough to buy.
There was always like a massive stack of them in HMV, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
exactly. My favorite of his from this period is Santa Cruz, which is his first single, which I bought shortly after that. But it would have been this summer. Yeah, which I love to this day.
That is helpful grounding. So let's get moving. We've got 20 tracks to get through, and this is supposed to be the short piece.
Yeah.
Tracks 1 to 4 make up the introductory section of the mix, and they feel very deliberately programmed to not scare any enemy readers away. So, in quick succession, we get Fatboy Slim's own remix of Pierre Henry's Psych Rock
Yeah.
to open.
Had that on 12 inch as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like, speaking for myself as an opener, like, that was intended to not scare people away, absolutely worked at the time. Like, in 1997, I had never heard Pierre Henry. I'd never heard Jean-Jacques Perry or any other kind of, like, French proto-synth meddler. So, in its own way, this kind of sounded as
What were you doing?
yeah, I know. What a fucking loser. I in its own way, like, this sounded as otherworldly as spiritualized to me at the time. Like, only, like, you could dance to it, like, whatever dancing was, because that was also not on my radar in 1997.
Yeah.
I think in 2026, the obvious response to hearing this would be, "Oh, it's the Futurama theme tune."
Yeah.
Except, weirdly, it's not.
No.
This predates Futurama by 2 years, and the Futurama theme is essentially a new composition that takes a big sample, of psych rock and then chucks in a bunch of, like, quite well-worn sort of ultimate breaks and beats samples. That's by a American guy called Chris String. I'll just say that there is no way he had not heard this remix.
Yeah.
The Psych Rock remix blends into a super early Death in Vegas cut, GBH, which is an early contender for the most insufferable track of the mix. If you imagine a kind of knackered fairground ride approximating like a generic ska tune played by theatre school cheeky cockneys, like you're not even close to how grating this record is. And the weird thing is, like, it's like bludgeoning chirpiness is completely at odds with the prevailing Death in Vegas vibe.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I always think of their sort of like goth dub cover version of Twist and Crawl by The Beat.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
and this is like, this is awful.
Or Girls, that's their big track, isn't it? It's used in Lost in Translation and a lot of ads.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that one because I think that's the third album.
It's a kind of shoegaze one, huh?
Yeah, yeah, the third album's the one where they go like full shoegaze. Anyway, it's the short section. There's like quite a clumsy sort of pitch control ride to take us out of Death in Vegas and to like clatter into an untitled white label by Basebin Twins, which was actually only one person. And like they were kind of US based and like very, very influential on that early big beat sound. Unfortunately, this track continues that theme of like 60s Jamaica in the style of Itchy and Scratchy Land. It's just bollocks. Like, I hate this sort of like really synthetic kind of cut up ska stuff.
Mhm.
It also repeatedly uses that Dynamite vocal sample, which already felt completely rinsed by 1997.
Yeah.
Here it is. And then, yeah, unbelievably, that sort of teeth grinding kitsch steps up another gear for an act we've previously talked about, the appallingly named Psychedelia Smith,
Oh, yes.
and a track called Fixie Jointy. which
Jesus Christ.
samples Louis Louis and Janis Joplin to like really infuriating effect.
You talked about in the last episode about it was a miracle that we didn't make music at this time, based on all the inspirational stuff around. This is what the music would have sounded like if we'd have made music at this time.
Yeah, you're right. I have a bad feeling like as we got older, we'd have basically turned into hot chip,
Yeah,
which no one wants.
yeah. I mean,
uh,
actually, we would never have left the psychedelia Smith world, is what I mean
yeah,
with it. Yeah.
we should have been kept there for our own safety.
Yeah.
The weird thing about this track, I mean, like, it's fucking awful, but there's actually some really interesting, like kind of Reese synth style sublow, like underneath all the wacky samples.
Okay.
Like every now and then, you're like, oh wow, there's like some really interesting stuff going on in that bass line, and like I don't know, a fucking like clown car horn sounds. So we've gone through the introductory 4 songs, like we're leaving behind what I would describe as the fucking Austin Powers suite.
Yeah.
And we move into a track that isn't actually credited on the track list. So that chops up Fred Wesley's Blow Your Head. You know, the super skronky synth loop that gets sampled on Public Enemy #1 by Public Enemy. So that gets chopped up over what I would describe as a legitimately tough drum break. And these kind of like solo finger stabs on a sampler of like a Get Wicked vocal sample. And it's so stripped down and minimal, like, it's so refreshing after, like, the bollocks we've just sat through. Like I said, it's unlisted. I've absolutely no idea who this is. Potentially, it's a Fatboy Slim or Simon Thornton, who was his long-running engineer, DJ Tool.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, big time. That gives way to Fly Life by Basement Jaxx. I adore this record. I loved it the first time I heard it on this mix, and it was solely responsible for me getting on the Basement Jaxx hype train at an irritatingly early stage. Norman Cook's own notes here describe it as a mixture of Latin, house, and ragga, which is sort of simple but entirely accurate. You've got these kind of air horn synths going off. You've got Masters at Work style galloping drums, and there's super, super like kinetic vocal, which like has a ragga element to it, but like has so much energy, it almost sort of is like a soaker sort of thing. It's a real shame this was not on Basement Jaxx's first album. From that, we jump in quite a acid sort of tune by Elite Force. Big samba drums and whistles, lots of skronky acid lines, and various cut-ups of the vocal sample from Mighty Dubcat's Magic Carpet Ride,
Mm.
which was another Fatboy Slim alias that made the charts around about this time.
And was the theme tune for Ibiza Uncovered.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it was massive. That track was huge.
I had no idea it was used on Ibiza Uncovered like that. It kind of sounds a bit like Exit Planet Dust trying to fit in at Carnival. Like it's a step down from Fly Life, but it's still pretty fun.
Ibiza Uncovered, for people that were not teenagers in the 90s, was like a kind of, like a reality TV show of, basically people in Ibiza puking and getting in fights.
The classics never die.
Exactly, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a step down from Fly Life, but it's still pretty fun, and it's quite clearly the inspiration for Everyone Loves a Carnival. Energy levels go up even higher. The next track, that is Lion in the Hall from Monkey Mafia.
Huh.
Again, I love this track. Specifically, I love this version, which has these mad kettle drums and kind of like this artillery kind of fire kick drum. The huge, huge vocal sample that does a pretty good approximation of a roar. It does sound a bit like the vocal sample is someone shouting Brian in the hall, but I can live with that. Annoyingly, the liner notes on this don't specify what mix of the track this is,
Hmm,
because between the Monkey Mafia album and the endless 12-inch versions, I have never found a commercially available version as good as this.
that is frustrating.
So from that, we get another borderline train wreck mix into our Rip Groove by Double Nine Nine. So I appreciate in 2026 this is an overly rinsed old school tune, but in
Yes.
1997, Enemy readers were not exposed to this kind of thing.
No.
I found it mind blowing then on like a shitty Walkman, and I still think it's fucking amazing now.
It's an amazing track. It's a classic.
Yeah, classic. It's a genuine classic and well deserved. Bonus points for Fatboy Slim attempting to credit the speed garage anthem to a genre he invents called Jungle House in his notes.
Nice.
Glad that didn't work out. Kind of falling out of Rip Groove, we get a very vague description of an act listed as old school flavors who contribute a kind of electro like DJ weapon of mass destruction. It's credited to in the magazine article notes a certain group of vibes as in the enemy's dance column, techno boffins who shall remain nameless. I have absolutely no idea who this is. There are 4 EPs by this outfit on Discogs, and there is not a shred of information on them.
What label
I
they on?
all white labels.
Oh, okay.
It sounds very, very Chemical Brothers-ish, which is not the same. Last time I'll say that. But yeah, it kind of moves past that sweet spot of heaviness that Rip Groove had and starts to get a bit too bludgeoning. And then, yeah, finally, side one wraps up with CJ Bolan versus Hard Knocks The Prophet, which completely fucks the vibe by losing any semblance of a groove and just resorting to industrial electro. Even at the time, I remember thinking this was pretty dull and like, yeah, this is just like being punched in the head repeatedly.
We will stick a pin in Hard Knocks, though, as we will definitely circle back to them at some point on this podcast.
Yes, that is a conversation I look forward to us having.
Absolutely.
Side 2 opens with a pair of tracks from Mickey Finn's early jump-up drum and bass label, Urban Takeover. The best way to describe those 2 tracks, which are Big Time and Hyper Funk, is that a big beat attitude to hip-hop is bolted on to an old-school jungle structure. Big Time doesn't have much going for it beyond its kind of beat switch from like East Coast hip hop instrumental to a jungle roller. But Hype the Funk is a bit more engaging. Like I was utterly and joyfully oblivious to drum and bass scene politics at the time, beyond the previously discussed terror of shopping and dance too. But considering the place Urban Takeover and Jump Up in general occupied in like the like drum and bass ecosystem, it makes perfect sense they'd find a warm reception from Fatboy Slim. We get a third jungle tune, which is not on Urban Takeover, with the ungoogleably named 175. It's listed as Volume 1 on the tape. It's actually called Turn on the Heat Again. Aggie bass line, noirish sax, cartoon synth washes, and a big, definitely not licensed Busta Rhymes a cappella sample that give the track its name.
Yeah.
So big tempo drop then from moving to hip hop. And my unlikely 2026 highlight of this entire mix, it's Latyrix with a track that is also called Latyrix. So this comes from their 97 debut album, which was also called Latyrix on Soulsides Records and is produced by DJ Shadow. I just think this is fucking incredible. It's this really dense, genuinely psychedelic hip hop that like clearly had a massive impact on Cloud Dead and like that sort of alt rap space as they were emerging. And it's prompted me to go and listen to this album for the first time in decades this week. Super, super minimalist, lean beat, like not like introducing at all. Definitely closer to the Private Press. Incredibly dense, trippy production on the 2MC's vocal lines. There's tons of stereo panning and kind of phasing going on. Their lyrics and flows kind of compound that by being disorientating as fuck without getting too wacky. I just think this is an incredible track.
Can't remember it at all. Sounds great.
I don't know if you'd like it. Like,
Okay.
in my head, I wasn't looking forward to it. And when it came on, I was like, no, wait a minute. This is amazing. Fatboy Slim compares to Della Soul in his notes. So I don't know, whatever the noise is for a shrug emoji.
Yeah.
We move quickly from the sublime to the dog shit. It's the instrumental of UK hip hop journeyman Khalif's Trials of Life, which is a succession of old school, inverted commas, hip hop cliches strung together in a manner so imaginative that it would embarrass the wise guys. Like, honestly, man, like records like this are why grime had to happen.
Yeah.
After 90 seconds of that misery, we get Mr. Dan's one-man band, band spelled BANNED, which is an utterly unremarkable Exit Planet Dust knockoff that is elevated by not being that Khalif track and having a decent pun for a title. That goes in like an additional sort of dreary hard electro remix of Bassbin Twins. That remix is credited to Mighty Dubcats, so that's more Norman Cook. And then that goes into Overseer's Hit the Tarmac, which gives us a hat trick of what in 2026 we might describe as Temu Chemical Brothers. Home straight vibe shift is achieved by the penultimate track, which is maybe not a good record, but at least an interesting one. That is Cutler Rock's post punk progressive,
Oh
which
yeah.
was released by the same skint label that was Fatboy Slim's home. The Enemy describes it as, and I quote, single handedly inventing Northern Soul surf beat. And Norman Cook claims stupid swing 60s loops with mad boots will be the sound of the summer. He is correct insofar as they will be the sound of summer 1998 when his own Rockefeller skank takes his formula and runs with it.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, like a cynic may suggest that he played this record to his engineer and said, "Make me one like this,"
Yeah.
and I am that cynic.
But they just described the template. It's crazy. He reads it, he's just like, "Oh, hang on, wait, that's a really good idea. Let me just do that."
Yeah, yeah, I'll finish that myself. Nice
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And then, yeah, last track here is a Psychedelia Smith side project called Sensiteria.
Who could forget?
Well, exactly. With the 60s freak beat, cut and paste collage, give me my auger back. Now, by all measurable qualities, I should despise this record. Embarrassingly, I love it. um, but there's
How do you
this.
like swimming in raw sewage?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's sections where they drop in. I don't know if you know this record. They drop in this disgusting guitar riff from the '60s Dutch garage band Shocking Blue, and their song "Send Me a Postcard." Every time that guitar, like the super super distorted guitar line comes in, I'm just like, hell yeah! Like
Yeah.
the drum loops are absolutely incredible. Basically, like what you've got with this track is a kind of deluxe version of Fatboy Slim's own "Going Out of My Head."
Okay.
Going out of my head with everything turned up to 11.
That sounds great.
In conclusion, I think I've talked myself into buying a Big Beat record off of Discogs
Yeah.
because this is not on any DSPs.
I imagine it's not. It probably costs about a pound on Discogs as well.
I'm expecting change at a 50p piece, put it that way.
Until somebody like Young Marco does a kind of, big beat compilation, and all the prices rocket up. I think, yeah, you get a nice. You could probably buy every record from this mix, quite comfortably within 10-15 pounds.
Who knows? Maybe Analog Slop will be the vehicle that breaks Sensiteria's comeback. Incidentally, the title, Give Me My Auger Back, is a dig at Bentley Rhythm who allegedly borrowed a Brian Auger, the kind of swinging 60s keyboard player record from Psychedelia Smith and surreptitiously sampled it. So, yeah, art, drama, politics, what a record. That's Beat Up the Enemy. My first revisit was awful. My second was grueling. And by my third, I started to really, really enjoy some of these records again. I know you haven't had the luxury of living with this mix for a couple of weeks like I have, but are there any particular standouts mentioned there for good or ill that trigger any memories?
No.
No, I remember nothing.
Do you know, I think I had this tape, obviously. I listened to this tape, but do you remember the Big Beat Boutique compilations that came out? He
Yeah,
did
yeah.
one and Loaf Dirty All Stars did one. So when I was like, "When's he gonna get to that Jungle Brothers track?" And then I was like, "Oh, no, I'm just thinking of a completely different mix." So I think
Yeah, that's the start of the Big Beat Boutique CD where he pitches up the acapella at double time.
that's exactly it. So and I'm like so basically my memory scrubbed this and replaced it with the Big Beat Boutique compilation somehow.
Which I remember being much, much worse.
Yes, yes, I think it is.
So yeah, I will not be doing a track by track review of that.
But well, I'm not what year did no, let's not get into this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's enough Fatboy Slim mix analysis.
Join us next
Right.
week for more. It is the 24th of May, 1997. This week, I want to talk about the album review section in the Melody Maker in its entirety.
Good lord.
In a kind of mini recreation of the marathon listening session we undertook for our Christmas episode,
Because you loved it so much the first time.
yeah, where we each listened to the top 50 albums of the year end lists from our respective papers, I wanted to go through the highlighted albums in this issue and rank them. From least to most, I wanted to put them in order of how 1997 they are. All right. Ignoring a small section at the end of the album reviews called Out, 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 which features short descriptions of albums and compilations released the following Monday after this issue date, there are 7 album reviews and 1 compilation review. The compilation is a very interesting sounding electro compilation curated by David Toop and released on Virgin called Booming on Pluto Electro for Droids, which is part of his Ocean of Sound series. It is mostly culled from music from the 80s, so it does not concern us today.
That would rank bottom of a list of albums that sounded like 1997.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. However, if we were to do this list, say 5 years later, it would rank a bit higher. Are you ready to discover the most 1997 album?
I'm super curious to know how this pans out.
Okay. At number 7, we have the Seahorses Do It Yourself.
Someone should do a super cut of us talking about the Seahorses.
It's funny because of all the albums, this is the one that I wrote about the most. And we've already covered this fucking band.
Ever since we started this podcast, I've come to the conclusion I've spent more time talking about the Seahorses than I've ever spent listening to the Seahorses.
We just have to keep coming back to the trough to talk about their debut and one and only album.
Go on then. What's your take this week?
We're covering the same 12 songs repeatedly. As the nation's premier Seahorses podcast.
That's what we've been missing.
Right, so it gets an almost full-page review by Everett True. The title of this review is Put an Annelid on It. I had to look this up. An annelid is a type of worm that can live in the sea. I wonder whether Everett True thinks that seahorses are annelids. A quick Google tells me they are not. But this would have been beyond the music journalist in 1997. We covered the Seahorses in our very first episode. They are the band that John Squire formed after leaving the Stone Roses. Though very different sonically, they occupy a similar space as Cast in the public imagination, or certainly the niche music fans' imagination. They occupy no space in the public imagination, same as Cast.
They occupy approximately 98% of the imagination of the people making this podcast, or at least that's how it appears.
Yeah. So, retrogressive, unimaginative dad rock. That's how I'm going to characterize their perception. In a time when many bands were accused of busking the 60s, this band's lead singer was a literal busker. When we covered them before, we concluded this was a band late to the Britpop party by about 18 months, and their most memorable contribution to the Times is their second single, Blinded by the Sun, which was a radio hit in the summer of 1997 that we both have fondness for. Everett True is less charitable, as you can imagine. Though not mentioned in this review, he covered the Stone Roses' legendary Spike Island gig in 1990 for Melody Maker, which he acknowledged as a cultural event that was nonetheless patchy musically. Patchy would be a kind summation of Do It Yourself, and its release was no cultural event.
At least the singer can sing. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's true. True gives a tease of where this album will score on our 1997-ometer in the opening paragraphs. While the rest of us have been mainlining on the Prodigy, Beck, and the Chemicals, Squire's been digging deeper and deeper into the past, reliving all those great moments of rock classicism. Here is a man who cares not for the complexities of the modern age, but who cares everything for a distant mythology. After calling the Stone Roses' Second Coming a terrific comeback record, Squire is again lambasted for looking to the past. True goes on. Who needs such transparent self-indulgence in the 90s? 2 decades at least since rock stopped being vital. Let us not forget, we are in the summer of OK Computer. Paranoid Android has been playlisted by Radio 1. Radiohead themselves are this week's cover stars. Whilst over at NME, Spiritualized graced the cover, as we've covered extensively. These artists are the acceptable face of rock music in 1997, along with bands like Mogwai, Primal Scream, The Beta Band. These are forward-thinking, rock-adjacent bands. The Seahorses are bluesy dad rock, does not fit with the program. Still, True lists 3 highlights on the album: Blinded by the Sun, Love is the Law, and Love Me and Leave Me. True notes the killer songwriting contribution of Liam Gallagher on Love Me and Leave Me, adding, "Methinks his sometimes mooted solo album might surprise many people." It will surprise no one when it arrives 20 years later, sounding like it was made in 1996.
with, with the Seahorses.
Well, Gallagher and Squire, of course, would collaborate further, releasing an album together in 2024.
Have you ever heard that?
I've never heard it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious enough to wonder what it sounds like, but not curious enough to go and listen to it.
Sounds exactly like you think it would. I remember watching the video for the first single off it and being like, yep, that sounds exactly like a John Squire and Liam Gallagher album should sound. My opinion on this album stands. There is something I find vaguely comical, if not outright comical, about this band that just about sustains my interest for 45 minutes. It's hard to believe this is a Geffen-released, Tony Visconti-produced album when so much of the material here is uninspired and undercooked. This album received 512 out of 1,997.
Okay. An admirably abstract scoring system.
You think that was abstract? Number 6 is Crowsdell, Within the Curve of an Arm. Have you ever heard of Crowsdell?
It sounds gothy.
Do you know Shannon Wright?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, it's a name you'd be familiar with, and it's kind of like Mojo featured alt rock stalwart, I would say.
Right, okay.
The Crowsdell are an American alt rock band. Within the Curve of an Arm is their second album. Their all-female lineup prompts reviewer David Hemingway to offer up Throwing Muses as a comparison, but they're closer to a lower energy whole. The aforementioned vocalist Shannon Wright at times sounding quite a bit like lived through this era Courtney Love, to me at least. Her phrasing and tone certainly reminded me of that. This album is fine. Hemingway agrees with me, calling the album occasionally compelling. However, there are 2 standout tracks, one of which is absolutely fascinating. It is track 4, Lurking in Sagas, which is all fizzy organs and drum machines. It sounds like it has been beamed to 1997 from the future, specifically the late aughts. Kind of reminiscent of electronic-leaning blog indie of this period. The thing I jotted down was the debut EP by Passion Pit. It is excellent.
Is it on DSPs?
No, it is not. This was the one album I had to go to the YouTube for. But definitely check this album out. Also, not the album, this track. Also excellent is slowcore closer Foul, which is, yes, pretty straight ahead slowcore, which I'm sure would have sounded really boring to me at the time, but now just sounds like, I don't know, 90s nostalgia catnip for, for artists I was not cool enough to listen to.
I understand exactly what you mean. Like all that slowcore stuff that was kind of bubbling away in this period. Like, don't waste that on a teenager. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
Let me discover it when I'm so very tired in my 40s.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Bring me acetone. So, yes, as I said, the rest of the album is good, but forgettable. And obviously on the 1997 ometer, it all sounds weirdly out of time. 3 or so years late. It's really bizarre this album was released in 97. Hemingway lets Crowsdell off the hook, though. They do not get the kicking the Seahorses do for failing to meet the moment. I have given it 637 out of 1,997. Next up is Bagsy Me by the Wannadies.
I was wondering when this would come up.
Okay, so, well, we're going to do Wannadies light and later we'll do Wannadies Heavy. So this is the fourth album from Swedish indie pop band the Wannadies. We will, as I say, we'll no doubt cover their career in greater detail in the future episodes, so I will stick to where they are at this moment in time. This is the follow-up to 1994's Be a Girl, which featured crossover hit You and Me song. This song has been released 4 separate times between 1994 and 1997, including as a single to promote this album, which it was included. It was included on the CD version. The album is clearly trying to expand on the success of this track by keeping the pop but maturing their sound and presentation. Now, a bit like the Fatboy Slim mixtape, I somehow had completely forgotten that I owned this album on vinyl, which did not include You and Me song, and was surprised to discover when I returned to it that I knew every word of every song on this record.
I remember us listening to this album a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I also own this on vinyl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you had the bonus 7-inch, right, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's with Depeche Mode cover, isn't it? I just can't get enough.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I had completely forgotten. Obviously, I'd recognised the cover, I recognised the song hit, and that was it. I was literally listening to it going, oh my God, it was a really strange experience to basically go, oh yeah, to know every song coming next, but if you'd have asked me an hour previously, I would have been unable to tell you what the songs were on this album. So yeah, I clearly listened to it enthusiastically at the time. Reviewer Ben Myers is clearly in a similar camp. The review begins, never thought that I would, but I've fallen for the Wannadies' innocent yet cocksure charms, hook, line and sinker. He praises them for creating a cocktail which is mightily agreeable to the palate. And it's true. I had a great time listening to this album again and replayed it multiple times. Standout for me is the closer, That's All. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's not the one that I would pick as my probable favorite, but I do remember that one.
It basically just starts off as a pretty regular Wannadies track and then just goes full on space rock over like a 9-minute runtime. It's really good.
The one that really did it for me off that album is Someone Somewhere.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
With that like accordion like droning the whole way through it. That's insanely evocative.
It's a melodica, but yeah, absolutely. It's
Melodica.
Really...
Fuck yes, that's what I was. I wanted to say Augustus Pablo. I was like, Augustus Pablo is not on a Wannadies song.
yeah. No, it is really, really good. Although Myers perhaps sets his sights a little too high for this band, concluding that if the Wannadies keep it up at this rate, there's absolutely nothing that says they couldn't go the same way as, you ready for this? REM.
Listener, they did not.
Well, he says, yes, they too could conquer the world. So this is not going to happen. There is something I don't know, quite C86 about this band. Very C86 about this band.
Yeah.
Bedroom indie, drafted onto a kind of early 90s corporate indie, and definitely not ambitious enough to be REM. But we can dig a bit deeper than this to score them on the 1997-ometer. See what you think of this. I think at this point, indie is splitting into 4. Number 1, genre progressives and forward thinkers. Our aforementioned Radiohead, Spiritualized, Primal Scream, the Beta Band. 2, punkers jumping off point indie pop, dweeb, midget, symposium. 3, dad rock classicism, Stereophonics, Seahorses, and at this point in their career, The Verve. And number 4, post Britpop indie pop, The Supernaturals, Tiger, Silver Sun. Despite being 4 albums into a 7-year career, Bagsy Me being released in 1996 in several markets, I feel like they nestle safely in category 4.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. Well, they're not forward thinking enough to be category 1. They're definitely not like classicists for category 3. And there's too much melodicism to put them in cat 2.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Cool. Good. I'm glad we've agreed on where indie is in 97. So Bagsy Me receives 1,002 out of 1,997. And Melody Maker, for their part, give this album their recommended stamp. Next up is Magic Earwig by Guided by Voices. a band that no doubt will get a deep dive at some point in this podcast future, although that is a big job for whichever of us decides to take that on. As this is their 10th album, it gets the lead review and again, Melody Maker's recommended stamp. It is reviewed by Jennifer Nine, who calls it the pop record of the summer. Now, this is a fascinating record. It kind of alternates between a kind of AM rock, power pop via alt rock vibe, a kind of private press psych folk vibe, and the psychier end of hard rock. So, there's a track called Portable Men's Society, which was an album highlight for me, which sounds like kind of mid-70s proto metal. Frontman Bob Pollard was born in 1958 and clearly was a teenager in the 70s. This album sounds like a stoner music nerd with excellent taste made you a compilation somewhere around 1975. Nine nods to this genre eclecticism, calling them record collection alchemists who send dedicated record collectors scrambling for cover somewhere else. She is not wrong. At 46, I feel like I have the experience to pass the references here, but if I'd heard this on release as a precocious 17-year-old, 90% of this would have flown completely over my head.
Yeah, yeah.
On my third or so listen to this, I thought to myself, this is real record collector rock. um, it oddly has some also quite Beatlesy Britpop moments sprinkled throughout as well. There's a track called Little Lines that honestly could be an Oasis track, but Melody Maker positions the kind of eclecticism against the more staid acts of the day. There's a dig at 18-wheeler in the opening paragraph, which means that despite this being the 10th album by an indie band from the 80s, it gets a decent score on the 1997ometer,
Interesting.
1,050 out of 1,997. Next, a band, again, we will no doubt cover in greater depth later. And actually, I'm interested to know how big they loomed in your life at this period compared to mine. And that is Penthouse with their debut album, Gutter Erotica.
Oh man, they weren't looming, put it that way. I was aware of them. There was always like quite a rich sort of seam of weekly press commentary on them.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, the vibe I recall, the music, absolutely blank.
Okay, so this is an album I never heard before, but I am incredibly familiar with the first track and single from the album, Voyeurs Blues, which I bought on coloured 7-inch as a kid and played to fucking death. Almost 30 years later, I still listen to this song regularly. It's an amazing track.
Is this on DSP?
Yes, it is. So Penthouse's Discogs page describes them as noisy psycho blues, which is a pretty accurate summation. Voyeurs Blues is an extreme blast of unhinged, sweat-drenched horniness. Unlike indie sleaze artists, Penthouse telegraphed their vibe by screaming the quiet part loud. This is indie filth, foregrounding a grungy, deviant energy and bolting it onto a Jesus Lizard-esque sonic palette. Melody Maker is all in on this, as I'm sure you remember, NME was too. Reviewer Victoria Siegel gives it a Melody Maker recommended stamp. She describes Penthouse as a gang of reprobates, fabulously filthy. She concludes the review with, yes, it's disgusting, but why stop at getting your hands dirty? Just go ahead and plunge right in, all the way. This is what outre commitment looks like in 1997. Melody Maker will put the Seahorses on the cover if they must, but they desperately want to move away from indie's post-Britpop comfort food to something offensive and age-gated. They don't want the blues rock reverence of the Seahorses. They want to put genre through a shredder. For my part, I will forever love the single, but the album felt twice as long as its 45-minute runtime. There was nothing on there that grabbed me like Voyeurs Blues. I give it 1,100 out of 1,997.
I feel like you were done dirty by the track sequencing. The fact that they put the song you knew first.
There's not much from this period that I will literally listen to 5 or 6 times a year. Like, I'll just be like, I want to listen to Voyeurs Blues and like play it really loud and almost deafen myself and still find it as exciting and visceral and sort of just, it's just noisy chaos.
I don't remember that track, but this is a hell of a sales pitch.
Yeah, it is just like, it's got slight gender bendy, like in your face filth. It's got this amazing bit at the end where like the everything just drops out and it goes into staccato guitar and like crazy pummeling staccato drums as well. Can't really say that, but it's just brilliant. It's really, really good. So next up is Sound of Lies by the Jayhawks. Fifth album from these alt country OGs. This is an album without a singular interesting sonic detail. uh, Dominated as it is by confident middle of the road production. However, when the songs are this good, who cares? This album is great. And like I was ready to hate this. And it was one of those records, this sounds like such an obnoxious cliche, but it's one of those records where about 2/3 of the way through every song, you're kind of singing along with them, even though you've only just heard the song for the first time. It's really, really good. If only all country sounded like this and was this enjoyable.
The whiplash going from Voyeurs Blues to the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I know. That's literally how I did it as well. Of the 12 songs on this album, all except one, Bottomless Cup, which has an unforgivable case of the Bon Jovis, are suffused with a kind of irresistible Beatlesy power pop. It sounds like a very competent big star made a country record. It's really good. Writer David Benham sums it up as containing the sweetest meldings of outsider country and Beatles harmonies since the matchless Gene Clark gave up the ghost. I mean, you got me at Gene Clark.
Yeah. I mean, no punches were pulled
Yeah.
during the writing of that.
Yeah. But where are we on the 1997-ometer? Alt country is definitely having a moment, building arguably to its peak in 1998, certainly peak ubiquity. So this album scores a generous 1,556 out of 1,997.
Lofty.
But we have now reached the pinnacle, the top of Mount 1997. That is the debut and only album released by California band Sukia, Contacto Espacial con el Tercer Sexo. You heard of this?
I remember the name Sukia. You may be surprised to learn that I do not remember the name of that album.
Well, Graham, do you like lounge, exotica, vocal samples from 50s novelty records, space age synths, whiny monophonic lo-fi synths, surf guitars?
This is taking me on a real journey because it's like, yes, no, definitely not.
Well,
yes, no, maybe.
Well, all these influences and more are put through a 90s left field electronic filter on Sukia's debut. These are its 1997 credentials in full. It is released on Mowax.
Okay, big win straight out the gate.
Track titles include Gary Super Macho and Dirty Afro. It's produced it's produced by hot off the success of Odelay Dust Brothers and was originally released on their Nickelback records. Despite the fact that this album is 100% made of esoteric, half-formed vibe sketches, this is a record that has somehow been made by a 4-piece band. It has a predisposition for sex that reviewer Neil Kulkarni describes as porn-noir. If I had a machine that measured the 1997-ness of a record, it would have smoke billowing out of it and I'd be spraying it with a fire extinguisher. So, and you'll love this, frontman Ross Harris. This band has a frontman. When you hear the music of this band,
and he's called Ross Harris. Such a normal name.
Well, check this out. He was a child star in the 70s and is perhaps best known for his role in the film Airplane, where he played Joey, the kid who gets to visit the cockpit and is asked a succession of inappropriate questions by Captain Over. Most memorably, Joey, do you like movies about gladiators? And you ever been in a Turkish prison, Joey?
That is possibly the greatest single bit of music trivia I have ever heard.
And also, how 1997 is that piece of music trivia?
Like, I bet someone just told James Lavelle that, and they were like, yeah, sure, we'll pick up the UK distro option.
I mean, I know this magazine, it's not, it starts way before 1997, but Ross Harris is nothing if not like an issue of Grand Royal magazine brought to life. Do you know what I mean? It's like walking around. Um, he also seems to have been deep in the Beck Dust Brothers camp throughout the mid-90s. Going through his Discogs page, he is all over Beck's Mellow Gold and Odelay.
Oh, wow.
It is reasonable to assume that all this Dust Brothers adjacent alt lounge sleaze had an influence on the playboy persona adopted by Beck for his 1999 album Midnight Vultures.
Yes.
In fact, he is quoted elsewhere in this issue as saying the album was a soundtrack for late night excursions in my fantasy van, which I'm sure sounded perfectly fine in 1997.
Does not scan well in 2026.
Yeah, exactly. It's alarm bells ringing. Um, so, as hinted in the previous episode, Sukia are also the featured artist in this issue's Maker Breakers. Melody Maker leans hard into portraying them as your quintessential end-of-century postmodern cupboard raiders, citing their name, a reference to South American Vampirella ripoff Sukia, and describing the band as an X-rated Lost in Space. Kulkarni, in his review, cites their sampling of Astrud Gilberto on opener Feelin' Free, and refers to their music at one point as a cross between James Chance-style harsh electronics and luscious 60s groin pop. It's all very Austin Powers.
Yes, isn't it?
Kulkarni loves this record, praising it for stimulating both mind and body and giving it Melody Maker's recommended stamp. I can see why this was so appealing in 1997. If we're going to take music seriously, let's take it into the future. However, if we're going to have some fun, let's treat genre and period with a playful irreverence and make music with a pop culture informed maximalism. However, it is not 1997, it is 2026. And this album is a barely listenable collection of skits and tossed off, pardon the pun, ideas that never land and are no longer funny. Think BS 2000 meets Tim Lovely. And speaking of things that have aged poorly, this album features a Martin Denny-esque exotica come tribal track with a spoken word vocal delivered in full village chief Ooga Booga style dialect.
But even in 97, I'm pretty sure that would have set alarm bells off somewhere.
It may have set off alarm bells, but on our 1997-ometer, it's top of the charts, and I give it 1,997 out of 1,997.
Truly the pinnacle of the groin pop movement.
The groin pop era, as we referred to it at the time.
That genre name makes me want to go and wash my ears out.
Yeah, well, go listen to some of the tracks, and maybe you'll put a gun to your head. By the way, not available on DSPs.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone involved would like to distance themselves from it.
And do you know what, actually, most strikingly is this review, well, not most strikingly, but most hilariously, due to a misprint, this review has the album title but not the band name above the album title. Just, I can imagine the PR person in Mowax like hurling the copy of Melody Maker across the room, screaming, for fuck's sake.
You had one job.
Yeah, you had one job.
You are going to rumble.
Join us next week for part one of our two-part look at the Enemy and Melody Maker from the 12th of March, 1994.
In the meantime, you can find us on the socials and most of the usual places. That's Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all under the Analog Slop name. That's all one word and spelt ANALOGUESLOP. However, if you prefer your podcasts to involve static pictures, we are also on YouTube. That channel is youtube.com/ANALOGUE slop. And finally, if you want to send us an email, we're reachable predictably on analogslop@gmail.com.